Class 2, Perception and Action. Overview of the visual areas. Hi again. Today we're going to talk about how the brain allows us to perceive the world and act accordingly. We're going to focus on visual perception first. Of course, it's not the only sensory modality. There's also sound, touch, smell, etc. But let's focus on vision first, because this is one of the better understood systems. Again, the game plan is that once we get the basic concepts down, learning the rest should be easier. Better this way than to have to remember all of the details at once. So, light rays enter the eyeballs, stimulating the cells on the retina to fire. From there, the signals are sent to subcortical areas such as the lateral geniculate nucleus, LGN, and then get relayed on to the cortex. One of the first and most important areas in the cortex is called the primary visual cortex, also known as the V1 or the striate cortex, which are just different names for the same thing. It is located right at the back of the head in the occipital cortex. A lot of it is hidden inside of a fold of the cortex called the calcarine sulcus. A sulcus is just a fold or a groove. As we will explain later, V1 processes very simple features like the orientation of a line or a sharp edge. From there, V1 projects signals to other visual areas within the occipital cortex and beyond. These areas within the occipital cortex are called extrastriate areas, which just means that they're further downstream than V1. Some of these downstream visual areas include V2 and V4, which belong to what is called the ventral stream. Ventral just means lower. So this bunch of areas together forms a pathway, or chain of processes. As we move further away from V1, they process more complex lines, shapes, and colors. Further down in the ventral stream, we have an area called IT, which stands for Inferior Temporal Cortex. There, the firing of neurons distinguishes different objects. In other words, the areas in the ventral stream show increasingly complex processing as we go further along, or as we say, go up the visual hierarchy. They start in the occipital lobe and extend into the temporal lobe. Overall, they process information regarding what is being seen. In contrast, there is also the dorsal pathway, which includes areas like V3 and V5. V5 is a rather special area, sometimes called MT, middle temporal. Neurons there fire when they detect specific motion. And then even further downstream, the dorsal pathway extends into the parietal lobe, where object location and other spatial properties are processed. So traditionally, we say that the dorsal pathway concerns where, unlike the ventral pathway, which concerns what. We will revisit this where versus what distinction later in the class. It's a bit more complicated than that, but for now, let's just keep it simple. In the figure here, SPL stands for superior parietal lobule, and IPL stands for inferior parietal lobule. Superior and inferior here just means upper and lower. These anatomical names are not standardized. The same area may be called different names by different authors, so no need to try too hard to remember the exact names for now.